All right. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Laura Hermann. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at Energy Communities Alliance, and it's great to have everybody back here after lunch. And I'm really looking forward to continuing the conversation today with our next panel. This morning we had the opportunity to talk about the successes across the EM complex, the efficiencies and the innovation that's taking place, and really look at some of the recent past. And I think this afternoon we're going to shift and start to look at present and future of the EM complex. And, Wade Cresswell from Oak Ridge, from Roane County, he talked a little bit in the last session about the alignment and how important it is to get that alignment from the community, the contractor, the government, local residents, really bringing everybody together. And the unique opportunity that we have across all of the EM sites where the new missions really can begin there because these communities are nuclear communities. These energy communities have the experience, the workforce, the familiarity with this technology to really, really bring us forward into a whole new era of the nuclear enterprise. And that sort of Manhattan Project restart is a really exciting opportunity, and there's a lot of momentum in where we have to go. And while so much of what is ahead of us starts with the EM communities, it really doesn't end there. It begins to expand. And that extended relevance of the EM mission, I think, is a really exciting time to be involved in the industry and what's happening. And when I think about what we're doing with the Energy Communities Alliance and being relatively new to the organization and meeting new communities as they're getting involved, it's been my job the last 9 months or so to really start to think about how do we as an organization, how do we as an industry facilitate more of what the community's been doing in terms of alignment going forward. And I'm always asking, who knows what I don't know to know? And I think that's part of what our communities are really looking for from each other. And we have folks here this time around for the cleanup workshop who are not necessarily in communities where there is an active DOE site, but they've come to our new nuclear forum. They are starting to look at the future of data centers on EM sites, and they're excited about the opportunities ahead. And so I think that this session here with our site contractor executives is a really interesting and important way to begin to continue that conversation, to learn from each other and think about how that mission is made possible through partnerships and who else within the complex across DOE knows what I don't know I should know. And so how can we continue to advance those relationships and find ways to learn from each other and improve operations, understand the scope of the challenges ahead, and really fulfill the mission of EM and the mission of the country at large and the nuclear enterprise that we represent. So with those open remarks, I just wanted to take a few moments to introduce the world-class company executives that we have here to really be able to kind of look on a site-by-site basis on what is ahead in terms of innovation, what are some of the exciting partnerships that are taking shape, what does the workforce look like? We've got a lot of content that we can cover here and not a lot of time, but we're going to try to move through some new examples and give you some new ideas about what's happening and where you can dial in for more information in the future. And so we have with us today, we have Dr. Tom Burns from Savannah River Mission Completion, and he's the president and program manager. So we'll hear some more about Savannah River. I'm excited about heading that way for our new nuclear forum in April next year. We have Bill Kirby, who's the chief operating officer of the Idaho Environmental Coalition. And we have, I was trying to go in order, sorry about that. And then we have Sean Dunagan from the United Cleanup of Oak Ridge. And I've heard a little bit about what UCOR has been doing, and we'll be able to hear a little bit more about what they have, what the look ahead looks like. We also have on the end here, Carol Johnson from the Hanford Tank Waste Operations and Closure Program, and Brad Smith with the Newport News Nuclear-BWXT in Los Alamos. And then finally, Bob Wilkinson, the president of the Central Plateau Cleanup Company. So, we have a really great lineup of executives here who are working with the companies that are that have a ground view of what's happening. And I think that while each site has a very unique set of challenges, we all share this responsibility in achieving the EM mission. And so with that challenging and consequential mission really starting to shift and move forward and progress into the future, we kind of wanted to start with some opening remarks from each of our speakers, really offering from each of your vantage points the major opportunities for success at your site over the next year. And so I'm going to start here with Carol to my right, if we could.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. Hanford Tank Waste Operations and Closure, we call it H2C. We took over the contract at Hanford to run the tanks program the end of February of this year. So I'm 7 months into this new contract. I'm not new to the business, but I will tell you that we are approaching the most exciting time, I would say, in my career, with the startup of WTP, of Bechtel's project, the direct feed law project, where the tank farms, of course, has been waiting for a long time for that to happen. The opportunity there is tremendous from a technical perspective, with getting waste out of aging waste tanks at an accelerated pace and feeding that pre-treated waste to DF-LAW. So we're on the cusp of that, and there couldn't be a more exciting time. I remember, I've been around long enough to remember, I was in H Tank Farm at Savannah River in the mid-90s and was there when we made the first transfer to DWPF. And so fast forward 30 years and that same scenario is about to happen at Hanford. And so there's really, it's really historical, a historical moment in time. So that's a huge opportunity. It comes with challenges. If I think about over the last several decades at the Hanford Tanks program, it's been mainly safe operation with safe storage and monitoring of the waste, some transfers happening between tanks, but nothing of the magnitude that we are about to experience over the next year or two. So if you think about culturally, moving from that condition to one where it is continuous operation, and the workforce readiness, the training of the workforce, and just culturally, the pace of operation changing, I think, will be perhaps our biggest challenges, and with that comes many opportunities. I would also say that the work required to accomplish that cultural transformation entails a lot of business process improvement, as well as a lot of cultural kinds of things, getting the entire workforce to embrace a set of values and behaviors that we have set forth as a company with H2C. So stepping through all of those changes, whether it be culturally, behavioral oriented, or whether it be process improvement, we have a heavy workload ahead of us, but it will ultimately help us achieve this very important mission in a much more accelerated and safe fashion. So I look forward to the months ahead for us.
Thanks a lot, Carol. Sean, let's move to you and talk about what's happening from the Tennessee perspective.
Thank you. We've heard a lot already today about the exciting times that are going on out in the Oak Ridge area. And UCOR really is at the heart of everything that's going on out there. We have so many significant accomplishments coming up over the next year that we're looking forward to. As an example, the Alpha 2 demolition that's going on over at Y12. Not only will that take care of some legacy hazard that's been there for too long, we are also going to free up about 2.5 acres of critical footprint on Y12 for the modernization for the NNSA mission that they have going on. It's just another example of where cleanup is enabling to pursue and further the national security mission. Another example we have is with one of our construction capital projects, the Environmental Management Disposal Facility, EMDF. That's going through the groundwater field demonstration. That is going to be critical in establishing what the final design is for that facility. That facility is necessary for us to continue our cleanup mission, not only at Y12, but also at Oak Ridge National Lab, allowing us to effectively and efficiently dispose of waste safely on site. That was desperately needed because our current on-site disposal facility is expected to run out of capacity here in the next few years. And that's all making tremendous progress. One big one that has been talked about quite a bit already today is the number of land transfers that we do with DOE that we support. One of those that's obviously very exciting is the one with Orano USA, their enrichment facility that they're building there. That's a $6 billion investment. And we are working side by side to make sure that that's moving along smoothly and effectively, working with not only DOE and the state and the new owners, but also all the construction parties interested or part of it to make sure that that can move quickly and effectively so that we can have a smooth transfer and move forward into this nuclear renaissance that we have going on out there in East Tennessee. And the last thing that I'd mention is we have a number of legacy waste on site that have been there for decades that require a very thorough examination for safe and compliant disposal. An example of that is the sodium shields that present a unique challenge. We've recently had some success in that. We're going to move forward with that throughout this next year and make some major strides into removing some of the legacy waste that we have and taking steps towards the future. It's exciting times at UCOR. It's exciting times in East Tennessee and really all across the complex. There's just a lot going on. Like Carol mentioned, and everybody else who you're going to hear from this afternoon, it's truly a neat time and an energizing time to be part of this environment.
Thank you. Tom, you want to talk a bit about Savannah River?
Sure, I'd be glad to. First of all, appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to the group about what's going on at Savannah River mission completion and the legacy cleanup at Savannah River site. After coming through the first 3 years, you've had great success, and we are really at a pivot point now for really taking another step. Over the past 3 years, I like to make this totally unfair and biased comparison, but in the 75 years, as Edwin and Dr. Green noted, his 75th anniversary at Savannah River. In 75 years, there were 8 tanks closed. Now, again, in fairness, was the mission to close tanks for all 75 years? No, but it makes a better soundbite. In the last 3 years since SRMC has taken over, we have achieved PCWR, which is preliminary cease waste removal. Without getting into all the nuances, that's all effectively of the material removed and probably 95% plus of the risk reduction activity. We have completed now 7 tanks in 3 years to PCWR, and we have a shot by the end of this year on tank 14 to have achieved 8. So that would be 8 in 3 years versus 8 in 75. So an enormous opportunity there. And then for the remaining type 1 tanks, non-compliant tanks, those are tanks without a full secondary liner, in 26, and maybe if I cheat a little into 27, opportunity to have all of those to PCWR with the waste removed into final sampling and closure over the next 1 to 2 year period. So very, very exciting times there. In SWPF, if you break kind of SRMC into 3 pieces, we're very, very large. Our goal was in the last several years was to get the processing capacity of the new SWPF plant up to speed, up to full 100% capacity, design capacity, recapitalize the older glass plant so its availability stays sufficient, and then to collapse the back end of the waste closures through technology and we've done things there in terms of drones, you'll hear about later in the discussion, commercial lab sampling, and then partnering with the regulators on the closure paperwork, and we're ahead of the game there. So in the next 12 months, we're really going to be focused on SWPF came out of its outage to put larger filters in better than we expected. We put 200% larger filters in. We're getting 8 times performance on the filtration. So SWPF is now effectively at capacity when it runs. DWPF, we've got a great team over there with a great plan. We put some buffer space in between the facilities, but over this next year, we're really going to be looking towards opportunities for success in recapitalizing the equipment, getting legacy or equipment that has been down and needed repair for a bit of time back up to speed, and try and get that facility to at least a 65% throughput. And then if we're able to do that, another milestone, we accelerated the going after higher curie salt early in our contract. And if we're able to run SWPF, we set a 30-day processing record last month at over 500,000 gallons in a 30-day period, which is great. We're in a small mini outage now. By the end of the week, we should be coming out, and we're really looking between now and the end of next year of setting some broader records in processing, upwards in the millions of gallons a year, 6 or plus over those time periods. If we're able to do that in 2026, we'll have knocked out 60% of the salt radioactivity stabilized. So that's a credible milestone early on, both through a combination of going after the high curie stuff while our flow rates were a little bit smaller while we were ramping up to capacity, and then by getting the facility up to full capacity. So a lot of exciting times coming up here, as I said, with the investments in the SWPF capacity, the coming investments in DWPF availability, and the kind of ahead of the curve performance on tank cleanings and closures in that process. We're looking for some real record-setting performance in 2026.
Thanks. Thanks. I reflecting as we kind of go through these stories and this progress report, we had our ECA board meeting yesterday, and we have some changes in our board due to term limits and new people coming in. And I think for community leaders, and even for investors, we had a webinar recently with financiers talking about all of these new exciting projects that are coming forward and how we're going to pay for them. I think what's really impressive about what the site contractors are doing across the board is delivering on these really complex projects. And for so long, I worked with the investment community, and they would complain, we can't do big things anymore. But we have been doing them all along. But I think sometimes in the nuclear community, we kind of get trapped in our own bubble of acronyms and historical procurement processes and really deep, complicated process, and lose the opportunity to tell these types of stories that you guys are sharing. So I think I just wanted to add that, because I know we've got new communities here represented with ECA who are trying to make sense of, like, why am I at the cleanup workshop if I'm not living adjacent to a DOE site? How is this relevant for me? And I think that the stories that you guys are telling right now really are relevant to everything we're trying to do and what we're trying to do next. With that, Bill, I want to shift to you and hear about what's happening at Idaho site.
Thanks, Laura. Few things going on up at Idaho. One of our projects is called the Road Ready Demonstration Project, and that's to make spent nuclear fuel packaged in a sense that it can go over the road to either an interim storage site or a deep geological repository. We've got about 250 metric tons up in Idaho that needs to go that way. We're trying to build it out so that we can go right from a demonstration project, which is to make one can, pulling the fuel out of our building 603, and move into a production mode after that. Another project that we're trying to move along in concert with that is a spent nuclear fuel staging facility. Right now, we're trying to, over the next year, get that through CD1 and moved on from there. And that's to build a typical spent nuclear fuel storage pad and this fizzy-like pad that you see at all your commercial reactor sites, those types of things. And that would be on the southeastern corner of our Intex site. We've got a Navy core card job, it's called. It's a core cartridge that will come from NRF. It's still up at NRF. We're hoping to help them deliver that core cartridge down to us. We're going to size that and remove the fuel in our unloading pool, which is the very south end of our liquid basins. Probably heard before, but we completed our wet to dry emissions and don't have any spent nuclear fuel in the basins right now. This would be to put the core cartridge in, size the fuel out of it and take it out. It's a very complex project. Basically, we have to design and build underwater cutting equipment and equipment to basically handle the cartridge, down-end it from a vertical position to a horizontal position, and then hold it in place while we size off the fuel. We have a lot of that equipment under fabrication right now, and we're hoping to start testing some of it coming up here. And we've started to get some of those components delivered to us. And we actually build some of that equipment ourselves on site. Our integrated waste treatment unit, which is our fluidized bed reactor to disposition our liquid tank waste. We're in an outage right now. We're hoping to get through the outage, start back up, and get to cease use on another tank. We got to cease use on our 188 tank over the past year, which was a nice milestone for us. That's about a third of our inventory of liquid. And then get to cease use on another tank. We're also getting ready to turn over our product storage building 2, which is where we store the vaults and canisters of the solid waste that we make through the integrated waste treatment unit. A subsurface disposal area, probably heard, but we completed all the exhumation in that area. We pulled down the op tents, and we've got maintenance cover over those facilities. What we'll be trying to move forward to is actually build a cap over those facilities, do the prep work, and get into actually building the cap to cap that in a permanent way. We're hoping to get into shipping remote handled true waste over the next year. We continue to ship contact handled true waste. I think we're still the provider of about 70% of the inventory that goes to WIP. And continue those activities. We continue to operate our treatment facility at AMWTP to compact waste and size reduce. We've been building for the last couple of years a new circular disposal facility. Started about 2.5 years ago. We're looking to complete that this spring. Be another nice accomplishment and give us the space we need for low-level waste disposal on site. We've got a calcine program. If you're not familiar with the calcine waste, it was a raffinate from spent nuclear fuel reprocessing. It is a granular waste sitting in bin sets of tanks on site at Intech. We've progressed on some technology development for that project, and we're looking to do a technology down select over the next year on that project. We've got some other waste, difficult waste that we're trying to work through and figure out ways to manage or treat. And we're also looking at some work for others. We're going to try to bring in a Lano glove box over the next few months and actually disposition that through our treatment facility, and then kind of open that up as a demo project and move on from there to take more boxes. That's about all I got.
Well, that's quite a bit that you've got going on there. Thank you. Brad, you are with Newport News and BWXT Los Alamos. Let's hear about what's happening. You've got a few different things going on.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Doing this after lunch is always a little daunting, so hopefully we keep everybody's eyeballs open. A few of the opportunities that we have, and first, for everybody that's in here, you know, it's always nice to catch up, and it takes a village to get some things done. And this year for N3B was very much that story. Last year, we were here talking about the corrugated metal pipe success, getting that done. But because of the help with WIP, Con Harrowwood, Mark Bollinger, Central Characterization Program, and others, we've been able to take those segments, 792 standard waste boxes. And for the first time at N3B, we have the ability with a backlog to ship and continue shipping and support the WIP mission. So if gaps come up, we're able to fill that gap. We have approximately 45 shipments in backlog right now with more to come. And again, thanks to WIP and everything that Simcoe's done to help us. We've also, during that time, and I think it's a good reminder, we hear what opportunities, and this is the first time, I think the Harvard Business Review talked about this. We have 4 different generations working at the same time. We all hear differently. We all think differently, but instead of looking at the differences, one of the strengths we've had this year with our field office is looking at where the commonality is. So when we were having some issues with some of the standard waste box certifications and other things, we reached out to Idaho. So thanks to Bill and Dan Coyne and his crew, we were able to have some conversations about what sort of difficulties have you overcome with similar wastes. Paducah Portsmouth, we were having issues with maintenance issue, backlog. So we actually sent our chief engineer and some of our maintenance crew to Paducah Portsmouth to see what they were doing, because we heard through Robert Edwards and others that there was some things that we could learn. And I think that's the key thing, irrespective of our staff. They may come in inexperienced. We were all inexperienced at one time. And I think it's respecting the fact that they're willing to learn. We heard about the best and brightest. And being part of a successful team starts to create its own inertia. And that's something that we've seen this year. We are about protecting the water and the land. So not just shipping the waste to WIP, but we have aggregate areas or canyons that surround anybody that's been to Los Alamos. You see these beautiful scenery. From my office, whenever somebody says, so where does your project go? I'll just take them. I've got a balcony and have them look down toward Santa Fe and Albuquerque, because you can see Sandia Mountain Range from Los Alamos. And once you get a feel for that, then you start realizing you have a real impact on how you do environmental management and environmental cleanup and protecting the Rio Grande. If nothing else, even though we have people that work, 40% of my workforce comes from Albuquerque. So from anybody that's been in New Mexico, and I hear that people aren't committed, that's a 2-hour trip one way. And they're doing that 4 days a week. And they do it gladly because, excuse me, because they know that they're impacting their livelihood, their families, and the future. So once you have that hook, now how do you build on that? Because we were talking about retention. So that opportunity for us is to continue networking in the families to get them the opportunities. I don't need PhDs. I need people who are tradespeople. So we have reached out to the unions, and we have a quarterly meeting with all the business agents and business leaders in the Albuquerque area, because they supply our union leadership and they represent what we're doing. And that has really, I take my leadership team, Mark Lisinski, the XO, Robert Edwards, and others, our labor relations person, and we have dinner with them. So we'll have a meeting, but after that, we try to share that transparency of what's coming up and where I need their help. And we're looking at apprenticeships that we can sponsor and get them in up helping us, because we have a restricted workforce. Like others, you try to find certain skill mixes. And right now we're in the middle of trying to tweak that so that we can, for the future mission, what does that look like? And by reaching into the schools, the middle schools that we talked about, and imparting that, there's an opportunity right then and there for them to want to come work for N3B because we're doing environmental cleanup. One of the other things that I'll talk about is the visibility and the transparency of communications. People that are sitting on the floor, they know their work. We're reaching out, we're looking for digital tools and other things we'll talk about later, but they don't necessarily understand what we mean when we say, well, what's an efficiency? These people are coming from potentially casinos, from McDonald's. So how do we make it individual for them to understand how they fit, but more importantly, show them where they can go? And during the corrugated metal pipe opportunity for some of our workforce, we had 3 entire crew turnovers, which was approximately 45 people, and still got it done. But in there, what happened? We had people, young men and women, who came in as laborers and other things, that as they got trained, some are fieldwork supervisors now. Well, what's that mean? They're wanting to go back to school, get that opportunity, because I've had some come into my office say, one day I'm going to be sitting in your chair. That's great. But without that opportunity, you have to do your work well. You have to understand the risks. And the more successful we are, the more opportunities they'll have for that progression. One of the proud moments we put into our communications out was we had our 200th WIP shipment this year. Everybody's going, well, that takes a while. Well, again, back to the backlog. And when we did this and we took the photo, the people that were there, we heard, oh, I knew my dad was one of the people that actually entombed the waste. So now there's a family connection. We keep hearing that over and over and over again. We mine our own with our families. How many here had ties to stay in this industry from a relative or an immediate family member? And if you look around, you'll see many people in here start raising their hands. So whether we call it Manhattan Project 2.0 or anything else, getting them excited is the biggest opportunity we've got. We're coming to the end of our option period, going into the last 2 years of our option period. People are not leaving. They want to do the work. So we need to set them up, not for our contract, but for future contracts, because that will keep them and the communities viable.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that example, Brad, of the 200 shipment and looking for those opportunities to celebrate milestones, achievements, and building that culture of accomplishment in how we tell the story about what's happening. So I think it's great. We'll move to you, Bob, and we'll be able to have you and Carol. We kind of bookend our conversation here with Washington.
I'll try to be succinct so we can go into the next couple of questions. So Brad said it, I think earlier, it takes a village, and kind of on what Carol was talking about. Obviously for Hanford, it's all things DFLAW and starting up of doing that. We're ready to receive the glass containers once they actually process them, and we'll store them down in the integrated disposal facility. But on top of that, there are more than ample things of opportunities for next year to list out. And I'll just highlight one or two of them, and I'll preamble it to saying there's another presentation tomorrow that's all things Hanford, and I'll go through the other 55 items tomorrow of all the opportunities we have. But closely on the heels of the tank farms mission at Hanford, we're gearing up next year to start removing cesium, strontium capsules out of wet storage and putting them into dry storage. And from a risk perspective, should there be an accident on the Hanford site, that dose consequence associated with those rods that are stored in a wet storage is probably the most significant to our Hanford workforce. Maybe not off the site, but certainly on the site that's kind of foreseeable in anything that we have to go do. So we're going to kick that campaign off. We're just getting ready to do our contractor readiness assessment here in the next week or two. Plan to start that in early November, and we'll run that all the way through for all the cesium capsules. On the back end of that, we have some strontium capsules that are being evaluated from a commercial aspect, and should that choice be made, we'll be geared up for that at that time when it comes. Should it not, we'll take those strontium capsules and also put them in dry storage. Where that comes into play with what John Longenecker talked a little bit about, kind of the preamble change of how you streamline and improving the process, that will allow us to offload about a $30 million hotel mortgage that we have on a nuclear facility, and allow us to start prepping that facility and not have to maintain it in that configuration that's really been kind of managed the risk for the longest period of times over the last 20 years. We're going into actually mitigating the risk, part of that perspective, which will free up more money for us to go do. So that's probably the most significant opportunity for us moving into next year as we go. We have a lot of other things queued up, including starting a transuranic waste program. We talked about a continuous learning environment. I was a supervisor was one of them that got to do the first shipment for WIP shipment from Hanford back a long time ago. And now we've actually going to be able to take all the lessons learned from Idaho and Los Alamos and all the other sites to be able to restart that program for us to start making transuranic shipments, maybe sometime as late as the next year, which will feed that pipeline to WIP and allow us to get rid of some aging nuclear waste. And as I mentioned, I'll go through about 6 or 7 other examples tomorrow that fit into that part of it. But from an opportunity and for us to talk through a time frame, I'll just highlight those 2 items for us.
Thank you. That's great. So, I mean, we wanted to give everybody an overview of the sites that we have represented here and tell the stories. And we'll talk a little bit more about innovation and partnership in the next few questions. We won't have time for everybody to contribute. So I'm going to let you guys, if you definitely want to touch on a topic, you let me know. But, we've heard already today that there is this emphasis within DOE and EM on efficiency, on streamlining processes, and really being able to carry out site operations in improved manners. I know everybody on this table here has examples of that, but does anybody is anybody really anxious to share an example from their site? Carol, all right, go for it.
Well, I would say we have a lot of opportunity to streamline and make things more efficient. And it kind of runs the gamut from back office kind of activities to, mainline operations. One of the things that we did coming in as a new contractor was, and I'm going to perhaps talk about this in two different ways. One is things we're doing internally, and then the other is things we're doing in partnership with HFO, Hanford Field Office. Internally, we stood up what I call the Office of Strategic Transformation. And we were provided a senior leader from one of our teaming partners, Long & Ecker and Associates. This individual has extraordinary experience in lean, in process improvement from across the board, EM, NNSA, naval reactors, and so I'm very blessed to have him on my team. But his job is to capture all of the initiatives that we have going on and need to do over the next year and prioritize those such that we can implement them in a deliberate, strategic way and not overwhelm people with, too many initiatives. So we have that work underway, and we have, lean has been around a long time. I'm sure many of you have used lean process improvement, but it had kind of waned with the tanks program over, recent years. And so we've reinvigorated that. Lo and behold, we found a person within our company who led lean process improvement for Amazon, and she was already an employee for us. And so the person we had retired, and she stepped into that role, and we're looking forward to great things from her. So you never know what kind of resources are available to you just within your, existing workforce. So we've stood up the Office of Strategic Transformation. We're reinvigorating our lean process, and we're prioritizing all of the initiatives. We've stood up a mission control center. If you're accustomed to lean, there's a mission control board where you monitor your progress with key performance indicators and all of your initiatives, such that senior leadership can monitor this mission control board on a weekly basis to see where the barriers are to making those initiatives happen. With respect to Hanford Field Office, we have identified 10 efficiency initiatives. I was quite impressed with the UCOR presentation this morning about your five initiatives. We have 10. Some of them are far from new ideas, but they need focus and dedication in order to take them across the finish line. One that was talked about this morning that's on our list is 413, capital project improvements and raising the threshold for those. So that's on our list. Things like just the transactional nature of our business and trying to reduce the cross HFO contractor transactional processes that we have. So there's a whole host of initiatives, but in partnership with Hanford Field Office, they have we are standing up individual partnering teams for each one of those 10 initiatives to see how far we can take them. Now, there is a dollar value that we have calculated for these 10 initiatives. I'm not prepared today to tell you what that is because we need to progress them a little further, but it's in the billions of dollars of savings if we can take these as far as possible. So I'm pretty excited about what lies ahead. I would say one of the things that we really, and we'll probably talk about this in another question, but the use of AI and machine learning, I think we have a huge opportunity there that quite honestly, we as H2C haven't tapped into substantially enough yet. So I look forward to further discussions on that and what we can learn from others. So Laura, that's what I have to offer to this question.
No, that's great. Thanks. Tom, did you want to add something too?
Sure, I'll try and be brief. I think we've are really proud of some of the initiatives that we've had in place at SRMC, and one of the mantras that I really push is reduce friction and return on investment. Not all reduction in friction is worth the cost, but we try and push that through all of his organization. Some of the big things are the drones versus crawlers. I mean, that's about $1 million per tank and 7 weeks of time savings for doing imaging and sampling in a tank, doing it with drones versus the tethered crawlers. We've gone commercial, looking to expand, make or buy internally by doing commercial lab analyses for these tank samples for closure. Those are anywhere from 1.5 million to 2 million gallons a tank and upwards of 6 months per tank savings. And then deploying software technologies is Carol was speaking with regards to automating transfers. We've now had on the order of 1,000 error-free transfers in DWPF with our automated transfer assistance. So, and those are kind of the big things. Smaller things, just having tooling developed quickly, or the craft being able to do quick turnarounds for adjusting our pump sizes. So we try and celebrate the big and the small, and we go on with many more examples, but it's really about driving a culture of continuous improvement that's all the way down through the organization. That how do we, in big and small ways, reduce friction where it makes sense from a return on investment standpoint, and really continue to drive for all improvements.
Oh, I appreciate that. I mean, when we're talking about return on investment, we're talking about that cost benefit analysis. And I think one of the things when we are doing that kind of calculation to figure out a path forward is really thinking about, okay, well, who are the different stakeholders in this process and how do they define friction? What costs or benefits do they see in the changes that we can make? Tell me a little bit about the types of partnerships that you're looking at to improve these processes, whether it's something that DOE could be doing that would be able to help you reduce this friction, or if it's something that local governments could also help to do to make these programs stronger.
Yeah, I'll tie that together a little bit of many of these panels the last few years. We've done a lot of discussions about kind of the one Hanford type of approach. For us, I think one of the areas of emphasis and opportunities that we have is we all have a tendency within our own auspice of our contracts want to go create our own item, right? Our own script, our own processy. But in reality, is we're really all doing business very similar in nature. And where we've been able to leverage that to a certain degree is, and I'll use HMIS as an example of laying out some machine learning scripts that allows us to bring invoicing in on an ability to take invoices through a machine learning script that can then be copied and pasted by all parties, right? So and one comes up with the innovation, we all take advantage of that. And I think as in total, I think in the DOE mission, we do that on an aggregate scale. We talk about lessons learned, talk about true programs, all those type of things. But sometimes we miss the opportunities on a smaller scale to be able to then to replicate that in a way and tie that together. And I think we've done a really good job at Hanford of starting to lay those things together up to and including there's a huge component of what we're required to go do to, at the end of the day, audit our subcontractors that do work for us. And we do that on a large scale volume. And we're going to our small businesses at Hanford as an example, 5 prime contractors going knocking on the door to a small business that says, hey, you subcontract with me, let me come audit your books to make sure you did everything well. And we've been able to share in many cases that says if one of us has audits, that we can all take credit for that same audit. So we're not only doing a 4-time audit, which costs money, but we're also not cycling our small business companies to the point where they can actually help bring us value back the other way. And so there's just a couple small, simple examples of that partnership that allows us to do that. And ultimately our client, the Department of Energy, helped us bring that forward, right? Because it was a little bit of, hey, if we take this, will you ultimately accept this as that part of the process? And they said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. And that was through kind of a dialogue and a process to be established in that regard.
That's great. Bill, you've got a site the size of Rhode Island, so I imagine that partnership plays into an important way.
So some of the things that we have done up at Idaho was, as a team, we're always looking for efficiencies, and I think it's just the culmination of our team. That's the way we think, looking for opportunities. One of our large projects up at NRF is we're dismantling the 3 naval nuclear prototypes up there. Original estimates on that where they were upwards of a $2.5 billion project in 15 years. We've got it down to about $500 million in about 8 years. Making great progress on S1W now. You might have seen the video, but we pulled a reactor vessel, blew the building down, and now we're moving towards finishing up some hull sections that are grouted up there and making great progress on the other prototypes. We came up with a UT process to do ultrasonic testing on questionable drums, rather than just automatically go in a repack. Well, we've done this UT process on about 3,000 drums, found that about 2,500 of them are intact, in which case we're saving on the repack of 2,500 drums and repacking the others. So we constantly look at it in terms of streamlining in business. We're partnering with our customer better than nobody else. You know, we work together on solutions collaboratively. We've got a great workforce in our USW workforce, working, you know, back and forth with Nick Ballsmeyer, who currently runs the DOE site for us. DOE ICP was Mark Brown, was Connie Flo before that. They built a culture of collaborating for us to be successful overall. And then there are some of the other mentions, the 413 3B floor. We'd love to see that put in place. And what I'd add to that is, I really think that process is built for a processing facility. You know, we've got one of our projects, the staging pad facility. It's in Asfizzy. It's a dry cast storage pad. There's not a lot of technology that goes along with it, or technology development. So I'd like to see that floor put in, and that it's catered more towards a processing facility where you've got to do some testing and bring your design along with it, that type of thing. So I got it.
Thanks. So I want to move to the idea around the workforce and some of the things. But before we get there, let's just talk a little bit more about, you know, with site contractors and industry, we talk a lot. This whole conference is here to talk about really assisting EM and making some of those relationships. And so I'd like to get your thoughts. And Sean, I might go to you first on this, because we've heard a lot about what UCOR is already doing, but you know, what can local governments be doing, and what can the contractors, what should we be thinking about in terms of those relationships to facilitate the types of projects that are happening right now?
Absolutely. And you said it earlier, and Wade Cresswell said it earlier this morning. Whenever we can align in both our purpose and vision, it's truly amazing what we can accomplish. I think Oak Ridge is a good example of that. We've been able to have consistent, open meetings with stakeholders, city officials, county officials, and that transparency is critical. It's two-way conversation that is required, both on our part, listening to their priorities and concerns while we're giving them updates on where we're at on cleanup and development, and developing that narrative with one another that allows trust to really begin to develop and formulate. And through that trust, we're able to have lasting partnerships that are meaningful and able to advance what we're trying to do, not only as contractors at the site, but also as members of the community. And I think that's always important. All of us up here live in the communities in which we work. We're all valuable members of that community, serving on boards, education benefits, helping with schools, churches, sports, you name it. And that allows us to stay in line with what the community has beyond just DOE scope, but also the general scope of the community and what their priorities are and their concerns, and being able to really listen to them moving forward. Without the partnerships that we have, we would never be able to be where we are today. We also continue our partnerships, whether beyond just with DOE and elected officials, but also with people who are coming to take over the land for reuse, such as like Orano. We're working with them at the White Wing Scrapyard to help prepare that, so that whenever they are ready, they can begin construction and maintain their timeline that they would like to have for that project. So we're working hand in hand with them and all the stakeholders, the state as well, to move forward with those projects successfully and efficiently.
That's great. Thanks. Earlier, Bob and Brad both gave examples of some of the work that's happening between sites to share lessons learned. And we've talked about that. But Tom, I wanted to put you on the spot for this question that we had talked about earlier in terms of what could be done to improve cross-site collaboration as we really look at some of the proven practices that are being used at the sites.
I think benchmarking is always a very valuable tool. I mean, there's lots of different ways, but for example, we've had some good success partnering with Edwin and his team in developing cyber governance models that open up the aperture for application of machine learning AI type items. I know we've set up a benchmarking session with Carol and her team on that. And sometimes there are differences between the sites that allow more happen in one place or the other. But sometimes it's just a matter of communication communicating some techniques and tools at work. We've benefited from benchmarking from numerous sites across. We've had even from international partnerships and so forth come down, taking a look at how business is done. So there are lots of different ways, but I think starting with looking at benchmarking opportunities are a great way to share lessons learned, knowledge, and so forth. You know, in some instances where you actually have the opportunity, just because of the corporate leadership, Carol sits on a operational board of managers subcommittee, and I vice versa for her. So there are some mechanisms there. Those might be a little bit more unique based on the corporate side, but benchmarking is very valuable and doesn't require any type of particular corporate affiliation.
Great. Yeah. Carol, you want to add on?
Well, I want to recognize Tom Burns in front of this entire group because he's had quite the patience with H2C. We have continued to benchmark SRMC. We consider it our sister site because it's similar mission, same joint venture companies. And I just want to thank Tom publicly here for all of his staff support of us coming in and benchmarking. We have looked at operations, we've looked at maintenance, we've looked at acquisition management, to name a few, and we've looked at the transition of SWPF into the tanks program there. So Tom, unfortunately, we're going to keep after you. It's been of tremendous value, particularly for my team who have been at Hanford and in the tanks program for such a long time. To see something different, it may be better, it may not be as good, but it's all about creating a learning organization, and you can always learn things from other people in other locations who are doing similar work.
Oh, that's great. So I think if you think about all of the work that's happening and some of the benchmarking that's happening, I'm glad you mentioned the cybersecurity piece of it too, because I think we don't talk about that as often as we probably should in terms of how important it is to the fundamental nature of how things get done. We've mentioned artificial intelligence and a little bit of how that's changing things. What does that do for workforce development at your sites? And Bob, I want to flip this question to you first to kind of talk about with the new realities, when we talk about being more efficient and operating a leaner EM in some ways, how does that affect workforce development on the site and how we recruit and retain people?
Yeah, I'll take it maybe in a slightly different twist is Brad talked about 4 generations worth of change in those. But I think one of the things that's probably most important is our younger generation that's coming in in a world that is an instant information world, right? We all have our phones. Everybody's got them sitting on there. Half the people are looking at them because we're boring you guys to death while we're having this conversation. But our younger generation is looking for growth and opportunities in a much more rapid fashion than what our industry has typically done. When I came up, I was told, hey, you're going to qualify as a shift manager and you need to really operate in this nuclear facility for about 3 to 5 years so you can understand it. I'm sorry, our workforce in 3 to 5 years has left us by that time because we've made them bored. And so for us, from a growth development perspective, is infusing the opportunities around the technology that's given that to our newer workforce that's coming in that allows them to have a variety of experience set over that same period of 5 years. That's not just you're the shift manager. So we've laid out our, I'll call it HR development process. It's more in like a 4 or 5 month increment bites perspective and smaller bites that ultimately still get you kind of the same spot in 5 years, but it's through infusing of experience set that allows them to move around on a much more frequent basis that then is infused in the ability for them to bring, I'll say, the technology parts of this together where we could be using AI or we could be using machine learning script, but for all of us that are longer in the tooth, that don't do that on a regular basis, we can actually, we say that, but how do we implement it? They stand there and show us on their phone in about 2 seconds and we go, well, let's go do that. And now we have the authority and accountability to enable them to go do that in an environment that allows them to learn and then move to the next phase of learns that ultimately allows them to have the larger business enterprise perspective that feeds together. And when we can join those two together, we really continue to harbor and keep our people available. And I think last but not least is we're all in the same community. Whether we're the Hanford community, whether we're the DOE community, is in years past have seen where we never want to see our folks leave us to go somewhere else. I think there's been a shift in philosophy on us continually improving and continually working together that says, if Brad has an opportunity for one of my people to grow that allows them to grow in both responsibilities and their knowledge base, that we encourage them to go to Brad, because at the end of the day, we might boomerang them back around in another 5 to 6 years. And I think that philosophy has allowed us to share more information more broadly in partnership across the DOE enterprise that we didn't have 10 years ago. So.
That's great. We are quickly running out of time, but I want to give everybody a chance to kind of help us close out and preview a future panel for us in the future on, what is top of mind for you looking ahead. I think the question we had talked about in our prep was like the one challenge that keeps you up at night. But I want to look at this from a positive perspective in terms of that one challenge might be keeping you up at night, but we know you're doing something about it now. So give us some of those things that should be on the horizon as we look at the following sessions, the conversations we have in the hallway, and future meetings. So I'll start at this end, Bob, and we'll go down the line if we can.
Yeah, I'll just say for us is, and maybe I'll do it in this forum. We pull this forum, we pull the waste management forum. We were, I think, jokingly, a few of us on the side that says a lot of us get up here and we're speaking to ourselves. Most of us in the audience have probably heard what we've said a couple times over. I think where there's subtleness in that is we all have contractor assurance. We're all doing our mission integration. We do benchmarking. I think where these opportunities come available to us is for us to find the slivers in the differences that we're doing that allows us really truly to improve, where somebody has figured out something slightly different, not drastically, but slightly different than what we're doing, that we can share in these environments as we go forward. And I think there's a continued opportunity as we pull together. Some of the things we hear in the benchmarking is, Bill's example of the transuranic waste containers and doing the assay and analysis before you overpack them. I'd been shared that by my parents, but had I not had that been shared by my parents, I would have been able to say, hey, Bill, who's your point of contact? So I can look at that because I got the same problem going on and see if there's a way that I can then emulate or share that. And so I think from an opportunity perspective, that is just a great opportunity for us to continue to do that. And ultimately in these, putting a whole bunch of us executives up on the stage and for an hour try to figure out how to hit a slice of a sliver of something that brings value to the audience. I think in some cases we may want to get very prescriptive on what we really want to talk about. So we get to the meat of it versus, hey, we're going to develop our people. Hey, we're going to do continuous learning. Well, how do we do that in a way that's slightly different than others? I think there's an opportunity for us to continue to expand that. So.
Good. Brad?
There is a theme throughout the day, and I think we've heard this even in waste management this year, keeping an open mind, being somewhat tolerant of risks that are taken. And I had an old boss, I will call it 2 years ago, or maybe it's 20, that said, remember, mistakes are like bank accounts. You only want little withdrawals. But I was given the opportunity to go and make some mistakes under the tutelage of someone else. And I think mentoring the next group is really important. And as we figure out, as Bob and everybody's saying here, I would offer that we be more tolerant and keep an open mind. And instead of saying no, say, why are you saying that? How would you suggest we do it? And an example I'm going to give, I've got my youngest one who's about to become a shift test engineer in a shipyard. Yeah, real quick. And all he said was, you all look at this, we're gamers. We try to find the quickest way. We hack things so why don't you ask us how? I thought that was really instructive. Ask how.
Excellent. Thank you. Bill?
So more or less just addressing the challenges that keep me up at night. It is injuries, so kind of shifting over a little bit more towards that. I'm sure that's the same across the board here with all the other site contractors. And just trying to preach safety. We preach it hard. We do require management to be in the field. We get a lot of success out of doing that. Lately, we have had some duck bites, mostly little con ops issues and that type of thing. People's minds not being on some of the small things to enter rat areas, things like that. So we've hit that from a number of different directions to try to fix that behavior. And we're starting to see some improvement in that area. Another more recent challenge for us is procurement in the supply chain. I mean, and that's probably again across the board. Any sorts of pieces of complex equipment, we're finding out that we have to go project manage for the vendor to get this stuff built and work with them on their schedules for that matter, to try to align them and do some things in parallel, et cetera. So those are a few things.
No, that's great. These are big topics.
Right, just very quickly on the keep it up at night is continuing the operational performance standard and inculcating the operational performance standard in a young workforce so that we're sustaining the safety levels that we need. And on an opportunity standpoint, I think it's out there. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things next year on applications of AI and ML. We were right on the cusp of transfer procedures being fully written through AI opportunities, training, development, things of that nature. So challenge the operational safety execution standard on a personal level, and then opportunity, the AI machine learning is really endless.
Mhm. Great.
And I'd honestly just echo a lot of what we've already heard in that, we're one missed handrail or one misstep away from a significant incident at our site. And regardless of how robust our safety culture is, how long we've been a VPP star site, all of it can go away in the blink of an eye. And that relies heavily on, workforce engagement, continuous improvement, and just continuing to develop. And then as far as an opportunity, I can't echo what Tom said enough. I think that we have to take the information that's at our fingertips and figure out how to optimize it and utilize it moving forward. There's such an opportunity out there, especially with the younger generation that's coming into the workforce, to see what they understand and what they know, and then just advance it for an area that, if we're all honest in this room, we don't really use that well. And so it's an area that we definitely have fertile ground to go there for and plant some crops and see some fruit come out of it. So looking forward to that moving forward.
Super. Carol.
So I think what worries me the most is maybe a bit lofty, which is the duration of our mission. When I think, we're out in 2080 with aging infrastructure and aging tanks and all of the things that come with dealing with that, which is much of what we talked about, how to have the workforce be ready, how to have efficiencies and streamlining that pulls that schedule back. And making sure that we remain investment worthy, because it will continue to cost a lot of money, and we have to demonstrate to our stakeholders and to the government that the mission is indeed worthy of continuous funds, a stream of funds to make this happen. So it's simply the years ahead of us that's going to be required to execute the mission.
Great. Thank you. I want to thank our panelists. I'm going to get Robbie Bennett ready for the next session, and his panelists, if you guys want to start to move, because I know we're running a little bit late. But while they are moving up here, I want to thank our panelists. I think, this last question hit on a lot of really important topics, whether it's injury prevention and safety, procurement, artificial intelligence. I think that Brad's takeaway, ask how, is I think where we really want to land. I think that's the purpose of these kinds of sessions, to share this kind of shared responsibility and how we get there. So thanks everybody for your attention after lunch today.